Alex had always loved the quiet streets of Pinewood Heights. The neighborhood felt peaceful, the kind where neighbors waved at each other and children played freely until the sun dipped below the horizon. He liked the gentle hum of everyday life, the way the wind moved through the trees, and the simple beauty of a morning without any rush. Yet, beneath the calm, tension sometimes lingered, mostly in the form of the homeowners association. Karen, the HOA president, was known for enforcing rules with strict precision. Most people kept their distance, knowing that even small mistakes could spark a lecture or a fine. Alex worked long hours as part of a federal police task force. His job was secretive, demanding, and sometimes dangerous. But he felt proud of the work he did. It was meaningful and made a difference in ways most people could never see. The weekends were his chance to breathe, to enjoy the small freedoms life offered. One of his favorite activities was driving his old Jeep, which he had maintained with great care. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was a symbol of his independence and hard work. He spent hours polishing it, making sure every inch gleamed under the afternoon sun. That Saturday morning, Alex parked his Jeep outside his house. The air was crisp, birds chirped in the distance, and the faint scent of flowers drifted from the neighbor's garden. He went inside to grab some paperwork, barely noticing the beauty around him. Meanwhile, Karen, who had a sharp eye for anything that looked like it might break HOA rules, watched from her porch. She had noticed Alex's Jeep parked slightly off the lines of the designated space and considered it an opportunity to demonstrate her authority. Minutes passed. Alex returned, expecting to take the Jeep for a short drive around the neighborhood. But when he looked outside, a jolt of panic hit him. His Jeep was gone. He scanned the street, expecting someone to play a prank, but no one was around. Then, he noticed a familiar car parked a few houses down. And there it was, his Jeep, sitting in Karen's driveway. Karen, of course, had no idea about the Jeep's significance. She had cut the lock and brought it onto her property, convinced she was enforcing the rules. Someone has to make sure these rules are followed, she muttered to herself. It's for their own good. She didn't realize that the Jeep was part of a federal task force assignment, nor did she understand that the man returning to the driveway was not an ordinary neighbor. Alex approached cautiously, trying to keep his voice steady. "Karen," he said firmly, "what are you doing with my Jeep?" Karen turned, her expression a mix of surprise and defiance. "It's in violation of HOA rules," she replied sharply. "I'm just helping you follow the guidelines. You should be grateful." Alex's heart pounded. He could feel the frustration rising inside him, but he knew he had to stay calm. "This Jeep isn't just a regular car," he explained slowly. "It's part of a federal task force operation. I can't have anyone touching it." Karen blinked, clearly confused. "A federal task force? What does that even mean?" she asked. "Rules are rules. Everyone has to follow them, no exceptions." Alex sighed. He understood Karen's obsession with rules, but this was far beyond her authority. "This isn't about rules, Karen. This is about safety. That Jeep contains equipment that is sensitive. If it's damaged or tampered with, it could put people at risk. Please, return it immediately." Karen crossed her arms stubbornly. "I'm only doing my job. You should have followed the parking rules like everyone else," she said. Alex's patience was thinning. He knew he had to handle the situation carefully. "I get that you think you're helping," he said, trying to keep his tone even. "But sometimes, rules need context. This situation isn't ordinary. I'm asking you to trust me." Move the Jeep back to where it belongs, and no one will face trouble. Karen hesitated, looking at the Jeep. Alex waited, silently counting the seconds, aware that every moment mattered. Finally, she muttered, almost reluctantly, I was only trying to help. Alex nodded. I understand your intentions. But this is different. Please cooperate, and everything will be fine. Karen went inside to fetch the tools to undo the driveway lock. She still didn't realize the seriousness of her mistake, nor did she imagine the consequences that could follow. Alex watched carefully, thinking about the delicate balance he needed to maintain. One wrong move, one careless word, and the quiet streets of Pinewood Heights could turn into a scene he had no intention of creating. The morning sun glinted off the Jeep as Karen worked on the lock. Alex felt a mix of relief and caution. He knew that by the end of this day, Karen would learn the truth about who he really was and why interfering with him, even unknowingly, could have consequences far beyond what she had ever imagined. Karen worked quietly on the driveway lock, muttering to herself about how rules were meant to be enforced. She did not notice the intensity in Alex's eyes as he stood a few feet away, watching every movement. There was a calm firmness about him that made her hesitate for the first time. She had faced people who argued with her before, but something about Alex felt different. He carried an authority she couldn't challenge, even if she wanted to. Finally, with a click, the lock gave way. Karen stepped back, wiping her hands on her apron. There, she said, I did it. The Jeep is yours again. Happy now? Her voice had a mixture of irritation and pride. She believed she had handled a problem properly, but deep inside, a small doubt flickered. She had never felt this uneasy after following the rules. Alex approached, his gaze calm but serious. Thank you, he said quietly. I appreciate that you returned it, but I need you to understand the seriousness of what just happened. Karen frowned. Seriousness? I was only enforcing the rules. It's your fault for not following them. Alex shook his head. No, it's not about blame. It's about consequences. That Jeep is part of a federal operation. Every item inside it is sensitive. If anything had been damaged or removed, it could have caused real problems. Karen's eyebrows rose, and she stepped back a little. Federal, what? She asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Are you saying this Jeep isn't yours? Alex sighed. It is mine, but it's also more than that. It's part of my work with a federal police task force. I can't give you all the details, but what you did could have put people at risk. Karen stared at him, the weight of his words beginning to sink in. She had been so certain of herself, so confident that she was only helping enforce rules. Now, the realization that she had interfered with something far more serious made her uneasy. Her hands trembled slightly as she brushed her hair back from her face. I didn't know, she whispered. The certainty in her voice was gone, replaced by confusion and a hint of fear. I was only trying to help. I didn't mean any harm. Alex nodded, understanding her perspective. I know, he said calmly. But sometimes, rules don't cover every situation. There are times when knowing the context is more important than following a rule blindly. Karen looked down at the Jeep, then back at Alex. She had always believed she was right, but now she felt the weight of responsibility in a way she had never experienced. The neighborhood was quiet, the birds chirping softly, but inside Karen, her thoughts raced. She had crossed a line she didn't even know existed, and the consequences could have been far worse. Alex noticed the shift in her demeanor and decided to take a step further to explain. "Karen," he said gently, "I don't want you to feel scared, but I want you to understand that what you did today could have affected a lot of people. I'm giving you this warning because I trust you'll be careful in the future." Karen swallowed hard. She had spent years enforcing rules, believing she was always right. Now, faced with someone who had true authority, someone whose work mattered far beyond her neighborhood, she realized how small her perspective had been. I didn't think about it like that," she admitted, her voice quiet. Alex offered a small, reassuring smile. "It's okay. You didn't know. But now you do. And that knowledge is important." Karen nodded slowly. For the first time, she felt humility. It was an unfamiliar feeling, but also a relief. She had acted with the best intentions, but she understood that intentions alone were not enough. Actions mattered, and she had just learned that in a very real way. Alex then paused, considering how much he should reveal. "Karen, I can't tell you everything about my work. But I can say this, the Jeep is not just a car. It's a tool for keeping people safe. If anyone interferes with it again, it could cause serious problems." Karen's eyes widened. She hadn't realized the gravity of her actions until now. I understand," she said softly, almost like a promise. "I won't touch it again. I swear." Alex nodded, satisfied. "Good. That's all I ask. Just be aware that sometimes, what seems like a small action can have big consequences. It's not about rules, it's about understanding the situation." Karen looked at him, and for the first time, she felt respect rather than fear. She had always thought she was the one in charge, the person everyone had to listen to. But now she saw that authority came in different forms. Alex's authority was quiet, steady, and rooted in experience and responsibility. It was different from hers, but it was something she could recognize and respect. As Alex prepared to drive away, Karen stepped back, her hands folded nervously. I hope I didn't cause any real trouble," she said, her voice small. Alex gave a reassuring nod. "No real trouble today. But remember this lesson, Karen. Not everything is black and white. Sometimes, understanding the bigger picture is more important than enforcing every rule." Karen watched him drive away, the Jeep rumbling softly down the quiet street. The day felt different now. The calm of Pinewood Heights had returned, but inside Karen, a change had taken place. She had learned something important, something that would stay with her for a long time. She realized that life was not just about rules, power, or control. It was about understanding, responsibility, and sometimes knowing when to step back and trust others. And as the Jeep disappeared from sight, Karen knew she would never forget the lesson she had learned from Alex that day. After the Jeep drove away, Karen stood on her porch, feeling a strange mixture of curiosity and unease. She had never encountered anyone like Alex before. He had a quiet authority, a calm confidence, and an intensity in his eyes that made her realize just how little she knew about the world outside Pinewood Heights. For years, she had believed that following rules was the most important thing. But now, she understood that some rules were only a small part of a much bigger picture. Inside her house, Karen tried to focus on her chores, but her mind kept returning to Alex and the Jeep. She remembered the way he spoke, the steady tone in his voice, and the careful way he handled a tense situation without losing control. There was something about him that made her feel both respect and fear: respect for his skills, and fear of what could happen if she ever crossed him again. Meanwhile, Alex drove toward the outskirts of the neighborhood, careful not to draw attention. The Jeep was not only a vehicle, it contained equipment crucial for a federal investigation. Every detail mattered. Even the smallest disruption could affect his team's work. He thought about the risks of the day and how easily an innocent misunderstanding could have escalated into a serious problem. Alex arrived at a secure location where other members of his task force were waiting. The place was ordinary from the outside, just a small garage tucked behind a row of shops, but inside, it was a hub of coordination and careful planning. His colleagues were reviewing reports, checking equipment, and preparing for the next operation. Alex parked the Jeep carefully and stepped out, feeling the tension of the morning slowly ease. "Everything okay?" asked his partner, Maria, noticing the slight tightness in his expression. "Had a situation with a neighbor," Alex replied quietly. "She interfered with the Jeep. Thought she was helping. Didn't realize it's part of a federal task force assignment." Maria raised her eyebrows. "That could have gone badly." "You mean she actually tried to take it?" Alex nodded. "She cut the lock and moved the Jeep onto her property. She didn't know." "It's okay now, but it could have been serious." Maria shook her head, impressed by his calm handling. "You kept your cool. That's good. Not everyone could have handled it like that." Alex allowed himself a small smile. "Sometimes it's better to explain than to fight. Not everyone understands until they see the bigger picture." Back in Pinewood Heights, Karen couldn't shake the feeling that she had learned something important. She walked around her yard slowly, thinking about the morning's events. For the first time, she questioned her own actions. Had she really been helping, or had she been selfishly enforcing rules without considering the consequences? She had always thought that being strict was enough, but Alex's words echoed in her mind. Sometimes, understanding the bigger picture is more important than enforcing every rule. Later that day, Karen went to the neighborhood coffee shop. She wasn't sure why, but she needed to talk to someone. Sitting quietly, she stirred her coffee, thinking about Alex and the Jeep. Her usual confidence had faded. She realized that rules were not just about control, they were about context, understanding, and responsibility. A few neighbors noticed her thoughtful expression and offered greetings. Karen smiled politely but didn't feel like talking. She was too preoccupied. For the first time, she felt small and uncertain. The world felt bigger than her little street, and she couldn't help but wonder how many other situations she had misunderstood simply because she didn't know the full story. Meanwhile, Alex and his team were busy checking equipment inside the secure garage. Every piece of the Jeep was examined carefully. He knew that the morning's incident could have compromised sensitive tools or data. Thankfully, nothing was missing or damaged. He made a mental note to update his reports about the event, careful to keep the details accurate without revealing unnecessary information. As the day went on, Karen returned home. She looked at her porch and thought about Alex once more. She realized that she had misjudged him. He was not just a neighbor or someone enforcing mysterious authority, he was a person who carried responsibility in a way she could barely imagine. She had learned humility, and with it came a new sense of respect. Karen knew she had to change her approach. She could no longer act as if following rules was the only thing that mattered. She had to consider the bigger picture, think about context, and respect boundaries she didn't fully understand. She promised herself that if she ever encountered Alex again, she would approach him differently, with caution, respect, and awareness. That evening, as the sun set over Pinewood Heights, Karen sat by her window, looking at the quiet street. Everything seemed normal, but inside her, a shift had occurred. She had learned a lesson she wouldn't forget. The morning's events had opened her eyes to a reality far beyond the neat lines of parking spaces and rule books. Across the neighborhood, Alex returned the Jeep to its usual spot, ensuring that everything was secure. He didn't know how much Karen had learned or how her perspective had changed, but he hoped that the experience had left an impression. For Alex, the morning was a reminder that even small incidents could carry weight, and that patience, calmness, and clear communication were sometimes the most powerful tools of all. As darkness fell, both Karen and Alex reflected on the day's events in their own ways. One had learned humility, the other had maintained control under pressure. Both had experienced a morning that would stay with them, shaping how they would face challenges, rules, and unexpected encounters in the future. The next morning, Pinewood Heights felt different. Karen couldn't shake the memory of Alex and the Jeep. She found herself watching the street more carefully than usual, noticing small details she had overlooked before. The way neighbors waved at each other, the timing of cars passing by, even the slight hum of activity in the neighborhood, it all seemed more important now. She felt a strange mixture of curiosity and worry. She wondered if Alex had other secrets, if there were things happening in their quiet neighborhood that she had no idea about. Karen's curiosity grew when she noticed that Alex spent more time at home than usual. Most mornings, he would leave early in the Jeep, returning only late in the day. But today, he seemed to linger in his driveway, checking the Jeep and adjusting something inside. Karen's mind raced with questions. What was inside that Jeep? Why was it so important? Why had it mattered so much when she had moved it? Unable to resist, Karen decided to observe from a distance. She kept to the shadows, careful not to be seen, and watched Alex as he worked. He moved with careful precision, opening compartments, checking equipment, and making notes. Every action seemed deliberate and purposeful. Karen felt a mix of fascination and fear. She realized that she had underestimated Alex. There was more to him than she had imagined. Meanwhile, Alex was unaware of Karen's presence. His focus was on the Jeep and the task at hand. The equipment inside needed regular checks, and any disruption could compromise ongoing investigations. He carefully inspected each compartment, confirming that nothing was missing or damaged from the morning incident. The Jeep was part of an important operation, and he knew that even a small mistake could have consequences. After finishing his inspection, Alex sat on the hood of the Jeep for a moment, thinking. The morning had reminded him that even ordinary neighborhoods could present unexpected challenges. He reflected on Karen's actions and realized that, although she had interfered unknowingly, her intentions were genuine. It was a delicate balance, keeping sensitive operations safe while managing misunderstandings with civilians. Back on her porch, Karen sighed. Watching Alex had given her insight, but it also made her feel small. She had always believed she understood rules, enforcement, and responsibility. Now, she realized there was much more to learn. The world outside her comfort zone was bigger, more complicated, and far more serious than she had imagined. She didn't understand everything about Alex's work, but she knew it was important, and that she had been wrong to interfere. As the day progressed, whispers began spreading through the neighborhood. Some neighbors had noticed unusual activity around Alex's house and the Jeep. A few mentioned seeing him coming and going at odd hours, while others talked about strange equipment in the Jeep's interior. Curiosity stirred in the quiet streets, and small clusters of people began speculating about what Alex could be doing. Karen felt a pang of anxiety. She had not shared any details, but she worried that the neighborhood gossip could complicate matters. Alex had warned her about the consequences of interference, and she now understood that even small misunderstandings could cause problems. She wondered if anyone else had noticed things she hadn't, and whether Alex's privacy and safety might be at risk. Determined to make amends in her own way, Karen decided to approach the situation cautiously. She considered speaking to Alex, but hesitated. She didn't want to overstep, and she didn't know how much she could reveal without causing suspicion or trouble. Instead, she decided to observe from a distance, learn what she could, and respect the boundaries he had clearly set. Meanwhile, Alex returned to his normal routine. He noticed some neighbors lingering near the street, watching from a distance. He didn't know who had been observing him that morning, but he remained vigilant. For someone in his line of work, curiosity from civilians could quickly turn into risk. Yet, he also understood that most people acted out of curiosity, not malice. It was a delicate situation that required patience, discretion, and careful attention to detail. As evening approached, Karen walked slowly through the neighborhood, reflecting on the events of the day. She thought about the Jeep, about Alex's calm authority, and about the hidden world she had glimpsed. Her respect for him had grown, as had her awareness of how little she truly understood. She realized that rules were only one part of life. Understanding, judgment, and caution were just as important. By the time she returned home, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow across the quiet street. Karen stood on her porch and watched the Jeep, now parked neatly in Alex's driveway. She felt a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and unease. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that her perspective had changed forever. Inside, Alex prepared for the night, ensuring the Jeep was secure and that everything was in order. He didn't yet know that Karen had been observing him, but he trusted that she had learned something important from their encounter. Both of them, in their own ways, were adjusting to a new understanding of responsibility, awareness, and the consequences of actions seen and unseen. The quiet of Pinewood Heights returned once again, but beneath the calm surface, change had begun. Karen's curiosity, Alex's vigilance, and the mysterious importance of the Jeep would continue to shape the days ahead. And both of them knew, in ways neither could fully articulate yet, that the ordinary streets of their neighborhood would never feel quite the same again. The following morning, Pinewood Heights seemed calm, but the quiet was deceptive. Alex had just stepped outside to check his Jeep when he noticed something unusual: a moving van parked near the end of the street. Men in uniform were unloading large crates, and a small crowd of neighbors had gathered, whispering and pointing. Something about the scene felt off, and Alex's instincts immediately went on alert. Karen, who had been walking her dog, noticed the commotion too. She hesitated, unsure whether to approach or stay back. Her curiosity tugged at her, but a sense of caution reminded her of Alex's warnings. The Jeep incident had taught her that sometimes, even small actions could have large consequences. She decided to observe from a safe distance, hoping she could understand what was happening without interfering. Alex approached the moving van slowly, his eyes scanning the surroundings. He kept his hand near the Jeep's door, ready in case the situation escalated. The men unloading the crates seemed professional, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something about the operation wasn't routine. Every detail mattered: the crates' positioning, the speed of movement, the distracted neighbors. His mind ran through possibilities, calculating potential risks. Karen noticed Alex's calm but firm demeanor. Even at a distance, she could see the authority in the way he moved. He didn't shout or demand attention, but his presence alone seemed to shift the energy around the street. The men working appeared slightly hesitant, as if sensing his seriousness. Karen felt a mix of admiration and concern. She realized once again how little she understood about Alex and his work. Suddenly, one of the crates slipped from the dolly and nearly fell onto the sidewalk. A neighbor shouted in surprise, and the crowd stepped back. Alex moved quickly, catching the crate before it hit the ground. The men looked at him with a mix of gratitude and confusion. Alex calmly set the crate down, checking it for damage. "Be careful," he said, his voice steady. "One mistake could ruin a lot of work." Karen held her breath. She had never seen him act so decisively in a public setting, and yet he remained calm. His ability to manage tension without raising panic amazed her. She realized that his authority didn't come from anger or force, it came from experience, knowledge, and confidence. After the crate incident, Alex spoke quietly with the men, giving precise instructions about how to handle the remaining equipment. He coordinated their movements, making sure everything was secure without alarming the neighbors. Karen watched from behind a tree, learning more about patience, focus, and leadership than she had ever imagined. Finally, the last crate was loaded safely, and the men prepared to leave. Alex gave them a final nod, satisfied that nothing had been damaged and that the situation had remained under control. He then returned to his Jeep, taking a deep breath. Even small incidents in the neighborhood could be unpredictable, but he had handled this one carefully. Karen approached cautiously, her curiosity overcoming her hesitation. "Alex," she called softly. Alex turned, slightly surprised but not upset. "Karen," he said, his tone neutral. "What brings you here?" I saw what happened," she admitted, glancing at the crates. "I didn't know it was so serious." "You handled everything so perfectly. I don't know how you do it." Alex gave a small smile. "It's not magic," he said. "It's about paying attention, staying calm, and thinking ahead. You've seen a glimpse today, but there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that people don't notice." Karen nodded slowly. "I understand a little more now. And I want to do better. I want to understand, to be careful, and not cause trouble again." Alex studied her for a moment. He could sense her sincerity. "That's good, Karen. Awareness and caution are important. Not everyone learns that quickly." For the first time, Karen felt that her curiosity could be directed toward understanding rather than interference. She realized that learning from Alex's example was more valuable than questioning or controlling situations she didn't fully understand. As the day continued, neighbors slowly dispersed, returning to their routines. The crates were gone, the street was quiet, and the unusual incident became a story that would be whispered for days. But Karen felt a lasting change within herself. She had witnessed responsibility, composure, and quiet leadership firsthand. She realized that her own sense of authority had been limited, and that true influence came from knowledge and action, not simply following rules. Alex returned to his routine, checking the Jeep and ensuring everything remained secure. The morning had reminded him that even a calm neighborhood could present unexpected challenges. Every day required vigilance, patience, and careful thought. And while he often worked in secrecy, today had shown him that small, visible moments could teach lessons just as important as anything done in private. By evening, Karen returned home, thoughtful and quiet. She had learned an important truth: curiosity was not wrong, but it had to be guided by caution and respect. She had witnessed responsibility in action and understood the difference between intention and impact. And as she watched the Jeep park safely in Alex's driveway, she felt a sense of admiration, respect, and newfound humility. For Alex, the day ended with the quiet satisfaction of work well done and a sense that some lessons had been learned by those who observed. For Karen, the day had opened her eyes to the complexity of the world, the importance of awareness, and the power of calm, focused action. And for both, the ordinary streets of Pinewood Heights had proven that even small events could carry lessons far beyond what anyone expected. The day after the moving van incident, Pinewood Heights felt unusually tense. Karen couldn't stop thinking about what she had witnessed and the responsibility that came with understanding someone like Alex. She walked slowly down the street, keeping her distance from the Jeep but observing it carefully. She realized that she had a lot to learn about caution, respect, and the consequences of even small actions. Alex, meanwhile, was preparing for a new task. He had received an urgent message from his team. Some equipment related to the task force needed to be moved to a secure location within the neighborhood. Normally, such moves were carefully scheduled and discreet, but today's situation required flexibility. The Jeep was central to this task, and Alex knew that any mistake could lead to delays or complications. As Alex checked the Jeep one final time, Karen appeared at the edge of the driveway, hesitant but curious. She had learned patience, but she also felt an urge to ensure she wasn't going to cause trouble again. "Alex," she called softly. He looked up, noticing her immediately. "Karen," he said, calm but cautious. "What brings you here?" I just wanted to understand," she admitted. "I don't want to interfere, but I also don't want to make mistakes. Is there something I can do to help without causing problems?" Alex considered her carefully. He had never invited a neighbor into his work, but he could see the sincerity in her eyes. Her curiosity was balanced by caution, and he realized that guiding her could be an opportunity for a lesson. "All right," he said slowly. "I'll show you what's happening, but you need to follow instructions exactly. No improvisation, no guessing. Do you understand?" Karen nodded firmly. "I understand. I'll be careful." Alex instructed her to watch as he loaded equipment into the Jeep. Every action was deliberate, securing compartments, checking locks, and confirming that nothing was damaged. Karen observed quietly, absorbing every detail. She noticed how calm and focused Alex remained, even under pressure, and she realized how much skill and patience his work required. Once the equipment was ready, Alex drove slowly through the neighborhood, carefully avoiding obstacles and keeping an eye on every turn. Karen followed in her car at a safe distance, feeling a mixture of nervousness and fascination. She had never realized how much planning and awareness were needed for even a seemingly simple task. Suddenly, a loose object rolled into the street from a neighbor's yard. Alex's instincts kicked in immediately. He braked the Jeep smoothly, preventing a potential accident. Karen's heart raced as she watched him handle the situation with precision. He didn't panic or shout, he simply assessed, adjusted, and continued safely. "You see that?" Alex said quietly when they stopped a few blocks later. "Every detail matters. One small mistake can create a problem. Awareness is everything." Karen nodded, her hands gripping the steering wheel of her parked car. "I see now," she said softly. "I didn't realize how important it is to pay attention to every small thing." Alex gave her a small smile. "Exactly. That's why I asked you to follow instructions and not guess. Trust is built on precision and understanding, not assumptions." Karen reflected on her own actions over the past week. She had acted with good intentions but had ignored context, rules beyond her understanding, and the importance of observation. Today, she was learning a different approach, careful attention, respect for boundaries, and following guidance when necessary. As they continued, Alex explained some general lessons about responsibility, teamwork, and awareness. He didn't reveal classified details, but he emphasized the importance of thinking before acting and respecting others' work. Karen listened intently, realizing that these lessons applied to many aspects of life, not just neighborhood rules. When the Jeep arrived at its temporary secure location, Alex parked it carefully and checked every lock and compartment once more. Karen observed silently, impressed by his discipline and focus. She realized that the ordinary streets of Pinewood Heights could hide extraordinary responsibilities, and that people like Alex carried burdens most neighbors would never notice. "Thank you for letting me see this," Karen said quietly. "I feel like I've learned a lot today. About responsibility, trust, and about paying attention." Alex nodded, satisfied that the lesson had been understood. "Good," he said. "Awareness and respect go a long way. And now, you know why interference can be dangerous. Sometimes, the smallest action can have big consequences." Karen felt a mix of humility and admiration. She realized that her past confidence had been misplaced and that there was more to life than rules and control. Observing Alex's work had taught her patience, careful thinking, and the importance of trust. She knew she would carry this lesson forward in everything she did. As the day ended, the streets returned to their usual quiet. Karen walked home slowly, thoughtful and reflective. The experience had changed her perspective, and she understood that curiosity could be valuable when balanced with caution and respect. Alex, meanwhile, secured the Jeep one final time and returned to his home. He didn't know how much Karen had absorbed, but he trusted that the lesson would make a difference. The morning had reinforced an important truth: responsibility, vigilance, and calm action were essential, and teaching others even cautiously could prevent future mistakes. For both Alex and Karen, the day had been more than ordinary. It had been a lesson in trust, awareness, and understanding. The quiet streets of Pinewood Heights had witnessed a rare moment of connection and learning, one that would shape how both of them approached challenges, rules, and interactions in the days ahead. The following morning, Pinewood Heights was quiet and calm, but there was a sense of change in the air. Karen walked along the sidewalk, thinking about the past week, the Jeep incident, the moving van, and the lessons she had learned. She felt a mixture of humility and curiosity. For the first time, she understood that her intentions alone weren't enough. Awareness, patience, and respect were just as important. As she reached the end of the street, she saw Alex outside, checking the Jeep one last time before he prepared to leave for another task. The morning sunlight reflected off the vehicle's polished surface. Karen approached slowly, unsure if she should speak. "Good morning, Karen," Alex said, noticing her immediately. There was a calm warmth in his voice, but it carried the seriousness of someone who had seen much and understood responsibility. "Good morning," she replied, smiling nervously. I just wanted to say thank you. For everything. For showing me, and for helping me understand." Alex nodded. "I'm glad. Understanding comes from experience, not just observation. You've learned quickly, and that's important." Karen looked at the Jeep, remembering the first time she had interfered, cutting the lock without knowing its importance. She felt a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude. "I never realized how serious it was. I didn't know what I was doing could have caused real problems. I want to do better from now on." Alex smiled faintly. "That's all anyone can ask for. Recognition of responsibility is the first step toward improvement. Karen felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She realized that her pride in enforcing rules had been replaced by respect for understanding, awareness, and patience. She had learned that leadership and authority were not just about power, they were about knowledge, calm judgment, and the ability to act without unnecessary risk. "Alex," she said cautiously, "can I ask something? How do you stay so calm in situations that seem tense or dangerous?" Alex considered her question for a moment. "Experience teaches you," he said finally. "But also awareness. Every small detail matters. You watch, you think, and you act with care. Panic only makes problems worse. Calm action and focus help you solve things safely." Karen nodded slowly. She understood now that calmness wasn't just a personality trait, it was a skill, a habit that came from discipline and responsibility. She felt inspired, realizing that she could apply these lessons to her own life, to her work, and to the neighborhood. "Karen," Alex said after a pause, "there's one more thing I want to tell you. Curiosity is good. Observation is good. But respect for boundaries is what keeps everyone safe. You've learned that now, and that's what matters most." Karen felt a warmth in her chest. She had always prided herself on knowing what was right, but today she understood that knowing the rules wasn't enough. Respecting limits, understanding context, and acting with awareness were far more important. She felt that her perspective had grown, and she was determined to carry this lesson forward. Alex prepared to leave. He checked the Jeep one last time, securing the equipment and ensuring that everything was in order. Karen watched, impressed by his thoroughness and the quiet authority he carried. It was clear to her that true responsibility required patience, focus, and constant attention to detail. Before he drove off, Alex turned to Karen. "Remember what you've learned. Apply it wisely. Not everything is as simple as it seems, and not every rule tells the full story. Understanding and respect go further than enforcement alone." Karen smiled, feeling a sense of closure. "I will. I promise." "Thank you, Alex." As Alex drove away, Karen stood on the porch, watching the Jeep disappear down the quiet street. She realized that she had changed. The events of the past week had taught her humility, patience, and the importance of awareness. She understood now that even small actions could have consequences beyond what she could see, and that responsibility often required calm judgment rather than force. For Alex, the day continued with his usual focus and diligence, but he felt satisfied knowing that Karen had learned an important lesson. He understood that teaching, even indirectly, could prevent future problems and help others grow. The ordinary neighborhood had witnessed extraordinary moments that would leave a lasting impact on both their lives. As the sun set over Pinewood Heights, a sense of peace settled over the street. Karen returned inside, thoughtful but confident. She had learned the value of respect, the power of observation, and the importance of trust. She knew that her relationship with Alex, though still professional and distant, was now built on understanding, not conflict. The Jeep sat quietly in the driveway, a symbol of responsibility, trust, and careful action. It represented more than just a vehicle. It symbolized lessons learned, boundaries respected, and the importance of calm, thoughtful decision-making. For Karen, the week had been transformative. She had begun with curiosity and strict adherence to rules, but she ended with insight, humility, and respect. For Alex, it had been a reminder that even in small neighborhoods, patience, calm authority, and teaching through example could make a difference. And as Pinewood Heights returned to its usual quiet routine, both Alex and Karen carried lessons that would stay with them. They had faced misunderstandings, tension, and the unexpected, but through observation, trust, and careful action, they had found clarity, respect, and understanding. The quiet street seemed ordinary once more, but for those who had learned, the neighborhood had changed forever.